Hi everyone, I'm StaceFace from Broken Piano and I'm an ambassador for the Sure Minds Foundation. Super excited about that still. That's never gonna end. So as promised, this is my first video log or vlog on how I manage my depression. I'll talk a little bit about the behaviours that I have with it and also what things I use to help me manage. These are all based on my experiences, so it might not be useful to everybody, but ultimately if it can just help you sort of bring comfort to you a little bit and help you feel less lonely with this, then I'll have achieved something good, which fingers crossed. It's my first one, so I'm a bit like, this is scary. You know I'm like that always though, so that's fine. So, a bit about myself. I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety when I was 14 years old. At the time I was going through some childhood traumas, which I'm not comfortable talking about just yet. And also I have a physical health problem, so I live with chronic pain now, and all those things have had a huge effect on me. When I was diagnosed, there was tons and tons of stigma, all this stigma, tiny amounts of understanding, tiny amounts of support, and so I was put on some very, very strong antidepressants. I've only just recently found out how strong they were, and that was it, just left to it. And that sometimes works for some people, and that's absolutely fantastic. But for me and the situation that I was in, it wasn't right. I guess with depression it's so fluid that it's kind of trial and error a lot. You have to have a starting point, so I guess that was kind of a starting point, but then there was no progression from that. There was no support, no one I could confide in. So this is one of the things that I love about the Sure Minds Foundation. They go into schools and businesses and educate mental health awareness, which I think at the time would have benefited me so much. It would have been really good. So yeah, a lot of my management techniques are quite isolated. I do them, they're very independent. I do it on my own just because that's what I was used to at the time. 14 years old, got depression, what do I do with this? So I just sort of trial and error, different things, and it was a long, long time ago. So over the many years, I've learned just certain things that help me. 80% of the time they help, but again, because depression is so fluid, there is that 20% of the time where sometimes it just doesn't help and you think, what's going on? But I think a big part of it is just learning self-acceptance with this. This is a huge, huge step. So at that time, when that 20% of the time it doesn't work, I'm getting to a point now where I can be like, that's okay, I know, that's fine, we can figure it. So yeah, I guess we'll start talking about what techniques I use. Let's go for it. I look at depression in the same way that I look at the ocean, which might sound hilarious, but it's fitting because I'm terrified of the ocean. It's tumultuous at times, it can be very still, it has various depths, there's huge waves of it, there's weird things floating around in there that you might not know what they are. So for me this is very fitting, and also I look at my experiences with depression as having 3 depths to them. So these are what I'm going to kind of go into a little bit. So the first depth is when the waters are quite still, and this is what I would term a normal state for me to be in. There's nothing sparking particularly, so normal behaviours for me in this depth are finding decisions very difficult, which I know it can be hard anyway at the best of times, but there's this huge, huge pressure when you have depression and anxiety, you put so much pressure on yourself that even like the simplest decisions, like what am I going to have for lunch today, suddenly it's overwhelming and you're like, well, I should eat something healthy, but I can't get to, like, things are like, it seems too much. Also, if you've got a busy day or there's something that's a little bit unexpected happening, it's normal to feel apprehensive anyway. I think if something new's happening, but when your brain's doing this, it's like, oh my word, you can't breathe, you can't sleep the night before, everything feels overfacing and the anxiety kicks in, you're panicking and you kind of anticipate the worst case scenarios of everything. It gets very, very difficult. And also another characteristic that it's my husband finds it endearing. When I meet new people, I think they are the best thing in the whole world. Like, I absolutely love them. And I think because you undervalue yourself so much when you have depression, if anybody shows any act of kindness to you, it's like, oh my goodness, oh wow, that's cool, they want to be nice to me, that's amazing. And then, so I'll get super excited and then they'll do something perfectly normal, perfectly human, that maybe I wasn't expecting, and then it's like, oh no, oh my goodness, like things aren't what they seem, it's all terrible. I don't know, these are all normal behaviours for me in stage 1. This is just stage 1. So, things that help me. One thing in particular that I've really noticed is aromatherapy. I'm not hugely knowledgeable on this. I have friends who are, so if you're interested, I can link you to them and they'll be so happy to help. I went through quite a long time where I didn't use any sort of incense sticks or oils or anything, and then when I did, I lit my favourite incense stick, which I'll show you shortly. I just felt so much better. I'll show you. My favourite one is called Nag Champa. It's it's that one there. Ooh. It's very heavy scent and you kind of sat in a cloud, which for me is great. It's not maybe for everybody because it does fill the entire room. Like one of these is like, but that for me is like it really relaxes me and I absolutely love that. But you can't always take an incense stick with you when you're out and about and in these like outside situations where things are kind of scary. So I've got an essential oil that I love, I absolutely love it, and it's neroli or orange blossom, which is, look, I have them to hand, I'm trying to be organised, can you see it? Ooh, neroli. So I tend to put that kind of on my collar or on a scarf or something, and so when I'm out and about and things are getting a bit scary, I can just be like, everything's fine, it's great, it's fine. It just relaxes me that little bit. So that's an interesting one, whether you like scented candles, plugins, incense sticks, oils, whatever. Give it a whirl, let me know what you think to that. So that's technique number 1. The second one, a hobby, right? So usually people have hobbies and things. Mine is obviously, my big one is music. So it just helps me manage things. I can just vent a little bit every day. I'll sit, I'll make time. For me, it's normally in the evening. I'll sit, play my piano, play my guitar, have a sing, whichever I'm feeling most connected to. This is what I'll do. And I think it's just important to have something where you can just vent your emotions into it a little bit. Whether for you it's art or writing or even just sort of going for a run or something like that. I think it's important to just feel like you can pour your heart out sometimes into something, and usually if it is creating something, that's amazing too, that's so good. And also the last little trick for this stage, I would say, it sounds so obvious, but when you're in the midst of this, it's not. Go outside. It sounds ridiculous. Obviously go outside. It's not so obvious though. So I got stuck into this rut where I'd do the school run and then I'd come home and then I'd sit at my laptop because I've got my music things, and then the day's done. That's it. I've not actually gone outside. But even if for 5 or 10 minutes, even if it's raining outside, just take a few lungfuls of fresh air and just breathe. I think it helps just living in the moment a little bit. It just helps clear your head a little bit. Again, I know that sounds really obvious, but go outside and just breathe, just for a little bit. Okay. So, depth number 2. This is where I can feel myself going down, but I know that I will come back up from it. And normally for me this lasts sort of 3 weeks usually. It's only because I've had this for so long that I've noticed this. Sometimes there isn't a pattern to it, and sometimes it's hard to identify any patterns in depression. It's really difficult, but fortunately I have found that this is one, and this I tend to stay in this state more than the other states. This is generally, I'm always generally in the second depth. So the problems with this, the behaviours and the difficulties I have with this one, I push people away a lot, and I'm really fortunate that particularly recently as well, I've found some people who have totally weathered the storm with this. They've stuck by me even though they're very new. Very, very, very fortunate. But the problem with this is that you kind of go on self-destruct. There's like all this self-loathing. You don't want to burden people with your problems, especially if it's a new person. You want to be like, hi, I've got all these problems. It feels difficult to create a relationship, and you kind of put all this pressure on it, and it's hard to trust people as well. For me, I always kind of expect there's an ulterior motive, like, why would they want to talk to me? They must want something. I'm not good enough really, like, so what is it they want? There's always that mistrust there in the back of your head, and so it gets hard to confide in people as well. You get so close and then suddenly it's like you panic, like, oh no, it can't be this good, it can't be, there's something bad going on, there must be. So then you don't create close bonds with people, and then you don't have people to confide in, and it just gets really difficult, and perhaps you need to talk to people. Another difficulty I have in this phase is a plan too much. Like, I accept too many gigs, I put tons of pressure on myself to achieve far too much. I'll think, like, in one day I'm gonna decorate my entire dining room, I'm gonna create a whole new set list, I'm gonna write a new song. All these things take a lot of time, but I'll convince myself that I need to do those things, and then you get to the end of the day and of course they're mostly unreasonable, and you kind of punish yourself for not managing them. That's kind of normal. Now, a lovely friend of mine, Paul McGregor, who is a mental health advocate, please check him out, I'll put some links on. He's recently talked about this in some of his vlogs, and it's so characteristic of depression to do this, because it distracts you from what's actually going on. I don't feel strong enough at times to face certain things, so I convince myself that if I'm busy and I'm busy and I'm busy, I don't have to think about it. I don't have to think about that, but ultimately I'm putting more and more pressure on myself and still not addressing the actual cause of the problem, and it can be difficult. But again, this is second depth. This is generally what state I'm usually in. So, ways that I usually manage this. Talking is such a big thing. Whether it's to a counsellor, I've spent time with counsellors before, and found that hugely beneficial, particularly when I was younger, and I didn't want people knowing certain things that I've been through, and it was just easier to have this external party who didn't have any emotional connection with me. I can just vent, and it just helps. I found as well, I went to a pain clinic with my chronic pain problem that I have, because you're so caught up in this big black cloud, it's just there, and everything gets muddled up, and a lot of problems that perhaps could be more manageable just seem exponentially huge, just absolutely huge. So at the pain clinic and at counselling, or if you've got a close friend that you can talk to, anyone that you're comfortable talking to, it just helps lift that cloud, I find. It takes the emotion out of it and gives you sort of bullet points. You can sit and you can write a list, or you can discuss what the reality of it is and how you can go about fixing this, or managing it. You can't always fix something, but sometimes you can manage it differently and in a way that's more beneficial. So talking is a really good one, honestly. Another one is social activity. There are times during this where I'll be like, I do not want to see anybody, I don't want to do anything, I can't do this. But luckily, again, this is where music for me is perfect. If I have rehearsals, band commitments, gigs, things like this, I can't let other people down. It's absolutely against me. Like, I have to do it. So I'll be feeling these horrible second depth feelings, but then I'll have a band practice, so I'll go to band practice and I'll come back feeling so much better, because it has just lifted this cloud a little bit, and I'm just, whew. So I don't know whether you pop and see a neighbour, or go see a friend, or even just going to do like the food shop or something, just a little bit of social interaction, I think that can really benefit as well. And another one is lists. Writing lists, I'm big on this. I've got notepads everywhere. If ever you're stuck for like presents for me, unicorns or notepads. So lists are great because it just helps. Again, it removes that cloud. It's that whole thing again, and I can physically see things. I can cross it off when I've achieved it. I can see that I've done it, because I think we often forget to acknowledge when we've achieved something. So it's human nature to push forward, and I was talking to Adam Shaw, founder of the Shaw Mind Foundation, about this recently. We as humans, we evolve because we push forwards all the time, but it's very rare that we stop and acknowledge what we've achieved, and that is so important. That is so important. So yeah, there's that. I'm kind of waffling now. So yeah, make lists, tick them off when you've done them, all good. Another one that Paul McGregor's touched on recently is mindfulness. I'll go into that in a little bit more depth on another video. It's something that we utilised a lot when I was at the pain clinic managing the chronic pain. It can be hugely beneficial. So have a look into mindfulness. Again, if you want any like links and things, I can send those to you. Just drop me a message. That's awesome. Okay, we're on to the third depth. This is a heavy one. This is a really heavy one. And in honesty, over the festive period, I've definitely been here. Definitely. I'm normally kind of complete Christmas elf. I love Christmas. But this year it's been very difficult for me. And I'm really fortunate that I've got some very amazing friends who, again, like I say, they've weathered the storm with this and they're still here. Love you guys. So problems with this is just functioning is difficult. Getting up to do the school run is like, you know, physically, if you felt that bad as you do mentally, I'm pretty sure you'd be in hospital or something. It's so hard to function at this level, and you're still expected to keep going because you don't have a pot on your arm, you don't have, it's not obvious to people, and because we're so reluctant to talk about it still, it's hard to get the help as well. So yeah, just everyday functioning, doing anything is so difficult. And you're physically exhausted as well. Your appetite's gone. There's a huge lack of interest just in anything. It's really difficult time. You also, the whole self-loathing thing is through the roof. It's absolutely huge. Huge mistrust of people. You don't want to trust anyone. You convince yourself, these are all my experiences, you convince yourself that people do have definitely these ulterior motives, and you make silly assumptions. I've made really silly decisions and things during this time, but because I couldn't think any other way, this cloud had absolutely descended, and I couldn't do it. So the things that I do to manage this, it's a difficult one, this one. But blanket days, these are what I call blanket days. I really recommend, I cannot recommend enough getting a nice snuggly blanket. Things that are tactile, that are lovely and soft and comforting. It's all about, in this stage, about comfort for me. So I've got my favourite blanket, is this big fluffy lovely one. I'll do the school run. I get the school run done, I come back and I hide in my blanket, and that's what I do all day. I might sometimes kind of make a nest where I get snacks, and it doesn't matter, any snacks, I get any snacks. Get my water and what have you, and just have a blanket day. Because if I push myself too much, I'll only end up feeling frustrated that I haven't achieved anything. And as I said earlier, a huge step in this is self-acceptance. And again, I'm really fortunate that I feel like I'm beginning to get to that point. So whereas previously, if I needed a blanket day, I would absolutely beat myself up about it. I would get so frustrated at myself for wasting a day. I'd convince myself that I shouldn't be doing this. But you know, if you're physically ill, if you have a stomach bug, or I don't know, something like that, you have to have a day, a blanket day. That's acceptable. It's acceptable to have a blanket day if you're not feeling well mentally. I'm putting that out there right now. You can do that. It is so important. Your mental health is as important as your physical health. So don't beat yourself up. If all you can do for that day is exist, then that's fantastic. You've done that. So please don't beat yourself up about that. Okay. So another thing to do, again, it's difficult, it might not always work, but try and just think of the things that you've achieved. One of the best things you can achieve in life is to make somebody smile, and there will have been a point that you've done that. So just think of all the things, and it just kind of, I don't know, it just makes you feel like you can do this, it's good. If you can, treat yourself. This sounds like, again, probably obvious, but I think when you're down this low, it sometimes feels like depression just is who you are. It feels like that's who you are. So whether it's going out and buying yourself something, or managing to, or even online, like, because sometimes going out is no. So online, buy yourself something, or just treat yourself in some way, because it just helps you reclaim a bit of your identity when you're feeling all this pressure and you forget who you are sometimes because it's just so dominating. I think just treat yourself to something, please. It will help, hopefully. And then another one, and this is a biggie for me because I've fluctuated on and off with this, and there's still a tiny part of me that kind of, I'm reluctant to do this, but I know that for me it helps. When I'm in this third depth, and I can't feel myself coming back up. I don't know when it's going to get better. I talked to my GP and I go on antidepressants. Again, I'm very fortunate that I've now found one that works for me. So I think that can be a big trial and error thing. There are a lot of antidepressants out there. So just talk to your GP, and if you think that's right for you, then that's always an option too. You know, as I say, I was kind of reluctant sometimes to do that, but you know, if I have a headache, yeah, I'll rest and I'll drink water, but ultimately, if that's not helping, I'll take some paracetamol. So why is the stigma still on antidepressants? They are there to help, and if they do help you, that's, you know, I do it. So, yeah, I think that's enough of me rambling. Have I rambled enough? I've probably gone blotchy enough and giggled enough. I'm great at giggling. But this is my first one, and I've probably waffled on a lot about myself. But hopefully there are a few hints and tips here that might help you. Please let me know if they do, or if you need any links and things. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for listening. Take care of yourselves and speak to me lots. I like talking. Take care. Bye bye.